All right, I think I'm done with this hand-wired limited edition 2002 AC30. Uh, the last Ne Plus Ultra effort of the UK-made Korg amps with all its flaws corrected. The primary flaw of this amp was, well, the primary flaws of this amp were number one, in any state of condition, the reverb circuit was really poorly thought out and implemented. It always put a huge load on the signal right coming off the tone stack, which meant that the channel, there's only one channel, high and low gain inputs, but it's just the top boost channel, was always darker and lower in gain and didn't have any response, any harmonic response, any touch response. It just deadened the whole thing. And as you can see in the previous videos on this amp, I'll have this in a playlist. You can look in my playlist to find all the others. I tried to think of a better way to implement the reverb. And using the gain stages here and the board layout here, it was possible, but would have been very expensive. It required a lot of work. And at the end of the day, you would have added reverb to an AC30. Congratulations. AC30s don't need reverb. If you need that, there's a world of great sounding reverb pedals. And this amp traditionally takes pedals in front of it just fine. Ask Jimmy Page, ask Brian May, ask The Edge. Second problem with this amp, which would apply to all conditions of this amp, depending on, this one is a little bit subjective to your taste. It was over-filtered from the factory. The filtering was way too high, and I lowered it down to JMI levels, more or less. There had to make some compromises because the tremolo stage and reverb stage had a different need for filtering. So as you can see in the previous videos, I came up with a compromise, but in stock form, this would have sounded very hard and stiff. In fact, it did, which was not helped out by the reverb, making the whole channel kind of lifeless. Some people will love that stiffer sound. It's a little more Fendery. If you're coming to Fenders and you play one of these, aside from the reverb issue, you may feel very at home. Coming from someone who's serviced a lot of JMIs and played an awful lot of AC30s, in all modesty, I have serviced and played through more AC30s than maybe everyone but Don Butler in North America, and he had a head start on me. I'm not saying I am the guru, and I'm sure there are guys in England who see these as often as I see Fenders. But I know AC30s very well. I know what they're capable of sounding like, what they should sound like. This one now sounds like that. The third problem with this amp in particular was it had a bad power transformer. So we got a Haybor and put it in here, and all those problems went away. The original was made by Schumacher, and Schumacher, in the days of glory, the 60s and 70s, made some of the world's best output transformers and power transformers used in Fenders. Classic blackface, silverface Fenders use Schumacher output and power transformers and reverb transformers and chokes and all that. Schumacher is not really known for making Vox transformers, and I don't know that the Schumacher company in 2002 was up to the standards that they've been at 30, 40 years previously. That would be conjecture on my part. It's not fair to say. What I can say without any conjecture is that the one that wasn't here was buzzing terribly. There was an acoustic buzz that was being injected into everything. So with the Haybor, all that went away. Now, when the amp came in with its stock power transformer, it had a 50 ohm output cathode resistor. And with the stock transformer with 120 volts wall voltage and that 50 ohm resistor, the output tubes were just getting nuked. So I changed that to a 75 ohm, and that put the output bias took it down from like 16 watts to about 12.5 watts. And that was great. Then I put in the Haybor power transformer. And once that was done, I had to change that resistor again because with the 75 ohm, it was only idling at about 11.25 watts. I changed that to a 68 ohm resistor, and it's right back at 12.5 watts. You could probably get away with the 50 ohm resistor with this transformer. Actually, this is not a Haber, is it? It's a Hammond. Sorry, it's the Hammond, not the Haber. My bad. They both start with H. Very good quality transformers, both companies. Anyway, with this a Hammond output power transformer, God, can I talk or what? You probably could use a 50 ohm as long as your wall voltage never exceeded 120. I think if your wall voltage spiked to 125, 127, as is very common here in Memphis and in a lot of places in the country, you'd have problems. I thought 68 ohms was the safe place to go. So anyway, all that stripped back, and the treble and bass are right around 2 o'clock, as is the tone cut. And that seems like an extreme o'clock position, but the taper of the pots that they use in these, that's where it sounds good. So if you see someone with a different model AC30 and they're running their tone controls like that, say they've got an AC30 Custom and you see that and you love their sound, and you go to your AC30 Custom Classic or your AC30 TBX or your AC30 Limited Edition or your JMI and put those same things you saw in a photo of the guy you like the sound of, you won't necessarily get the right sound. You've got to find where the response is for the amp that you have. So just below 2 o'clock, right about 2 o'clock here is a nice place for this. Tone cut in this one is a 500K audio taper pot with a 470K resistor across it because they didn't use a 250K like most AC30s use. And that's fine, but it changes the taper. So this, on this pot, is kind of like that on most others. But this is a pretty balanced sound. Bridge on an SG, still set on the edge of clean. Now, a lot of people say this is the sound for the Beatles, this is the sound for Tom Petty, this is sound for REM, this is sound for Radiohead. And yes, it does all that. It's also the sound for a lot of modern country artists. It's also the sound for some really great blues players of the past, particularly Rory Gallagher. You know, it's a very versatile amp. It's very much used by Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck when he was in the Yardbirds, but Jimmy Page uses one to this day. And it's not just some kind of jangly clean thing. People ask me, hey man, I want to sound like the Byrds. Well, then don't get one of these, because most of what you're hearing on those Byrds records was a DI and session musicians playing into Fenders. And the live amps they would have used would have been Twins for the most part. Not that they played live in that period very well. The later Byrds, Sweethearts of the Rodeo stuff with Clarence White, totally different thing. Totally different amps, totally different everything. I'm getting off course. But anyway, while this will do some of the nice Beatle-y things, you know, that's full range. What the part might have been would have been like. Anyway, I don't want to get the copyright people, but you know, this does a lot of those cool sounds. That's with the volume about 9 o'clock. Let's turn that up just a little bit. Mess it up. The actual amp for that was a hybrid Vox, whose name escapes me, and they used a fuzz tone, but you can fake it pretty well with one of these. And to really get that, you got to do a weird thing on the tone stack, which I've shown before. It gives a real mid-range push. But these are fun no matter where you set it, as long as you use your ears. If it sounds good, it is good. Let me show you this. I've got to change the master volume in this. It was a simple cross line. For those of you who will inevitably ask, what's a cross line master volume? I don't have time to answer all the questions. I answer the ones that Google won't tell you. But if you look up crossline master volume, you'll get an example. This is a post-phase inverter master volume, and it retains the character of the amp at lower output levels, and the taper is better. These things are just an awful lot of fun. And, you know, I'm not going to try to cop a lot of things or play too many real parts, but I want to point out something that a lot of guys chase with AC30s, and that is a certain Irish band. Now, an awful lot of that sound is not just the AC30. And let's just ignore the fact that Edge happens to be a really good rhythm player with great time. As much as the preamps and delay change the character of the AC30, he's also using typically T-top pickups, which are fairly low output humbuckers. These are more of a 60s style pre-T-top, but lower output. I have the pickup not too high, and check out this. Here's where the standard pick. That's a pretty good sound. But if you use this blue Herdyme with the serrated side like he does, and you use that side to pick, you get a very different sound. You'd really want the amp up a little bit more than that, and you'd have some preamp compression and coloration from a deluxe Memory Man, not to mention that eighth note. That's enough of that, but this makes a huge difference, and I'll show you that a bit more when we go to the Strat. Even if you don't care about sounding like a particular Irish band, having a pick with a serrated edge, it doesn't have to be one of these. It can be a max grip that you just flip around. It gives a different character even to the clean stuff. So let me dial this down to more of a clean. What I did there, if you're wondering, is I have it on both pickups and I roll the neck down to about 8. So here's with that on 10. 7.5. This is a Dunlop 0.88 millimeter green Tortex. This is the Flow, but it's the same material as the regular one. That could be a nice tool to have around. Amp sounds great with your fingers too. I have to admit, I'm still not as comfortable on the Gibson scale finger picking as I am on the Fender. That string spacing makes a difference, and not having the pickup right where my thumb wants to go makes a difference. But, you know, it's about the sound of that more than what my hands can or cannot do. Real fast before I go to a Strat, let's do some more rockin' stuff. Well, this is not the channel used for this sound. And Mr. May also has a treble booster. You can do some interesting things even with the top boost channel of the amp. I've lowered the master more for my ears than for the sound. It's a cool thing. Let's clean this up and go to a Strat. All right, we're pretty much back where I started with the volume at about 9 o'clock. Treble and bass, well, bass about 2 o'clock, treble just below that, tone cut about 2 o'clock. And let's see what, and with SG, with those pickups, even the relatively low output humbuckers is right on the edge of breakup. And with this, just a great big clean. It's got plenty of highs. You can always control that. One of the things about this channel, it's hard to communicate to people, is that the treble and bass are very interactive in the JMI, and they're interactive in the TBX. On this model and the custom, they changed the tone stack wiring. And on the AC30 Custom Classic, they have a vintage modern switch, I think it's called, that goes between the correct wiring and the incorrect wiring. It's an all in how lug 1 of the, or lug 3 of the bass pot, whether it's connected to ground or not. And in the old JMIs, it is. And it makes the treble and bass more interactive. It doesn't change the sound of the performance of the bass pot quite so much as it, I mean, it does if you want to get technical, but it's really about how the interaction shapes the mids. So I like to get this dialed up right on the edge of breakup where I can hear the harmonics. Just strum a big chord. And then I tweak the balance between treble and bass and listen to the mids. Right there is where what I want is happening. Might be a little bit bright. There. And then I'll just turn it down from there. And I just know the mids are going to have that punch in a band context. And at that point, if you want to make it brighter than that without changing the interaction there, you've got the cut control. So that's always going to depend on your pick. So if I go back to this blue one with the texture, so by itself that can be kind of clangy, especially when you're inept with it like I just was. But in the context of a part within a band, especially with some reverb and delay, it really makes things stand out compared to. And there are certain parts that, aside from all the gear, are about impossible to do with the regular smooth pick. So that's enough of that. It's not so much how to sound like X, Y, or Z, but be aware of all the variables besides the big obvious things you see. You see a guy in a top hat playing a Les Paul into a Marshall, and you don't know that that guy in the top hat playing through the Les Paul through a Marshall has got a guy like me who changes what's inside that Marshall. You know, or you see the guy and he's got the Strat and he's got the AC30. Why can't I sound like that? Well, he's got very specific preamps and delays, but he doesn't use the same pick most people use. And that can be down any path that you want. You know, I'm sure there's right now someone going through every video of Mark Knopfler ever made, trying to examine exactly how long his fingernails are. You know, like, oh, he was at 0.3 millimeters on that gig, and listen to the tone. To a degree, that matters. I'll let you obsess as much as or as little as you want. I like to bring these things out because people ask me, can you make me sound like player X, Y, Z? Well, no. I can make an amp that whatever player would be happy to use and get their sound from, but I can't make you sound like that. I've had guys come in who are world-class players, and while they're waiting for me to finish their amp, they'll plug an Epiphone I used to have into a stock Blues Junior that's just waiting for a new reverb tank or something. And they sound pretty damn good. Do they sound better when their, say, 66 Super Reverb is done? Yeah, they sound even better. Tone in the hands, that whole argument. To me, it starts in the hands. And it can certainly end in the hands. I mean, you can never get anywhere. But the guitar helps. If the amp is impeding, realizing the sound that one hears in one's head, or is the amp helping get that sound? If the fewer things in the way of expression, the better, at which point those toneful hands can really do their work. I mean, tone is in the hands, sure. A bad amp is like a pair of woolly mittens. What a lovely, versatile amp. Now, I know this has gone on a long time. For those of you who actually pay attention, the code word is kumquat. But, you know, this amp just started off such a long way from where it needed to be, and now it's here. So I feel like this whole thing here is just a little bit of celebration, a new birthday for this beloved amp.